So I'm a student midwife. I've been a doula for 8 years, and I've been a student midwife seriously for probably about a year. And I'm going to certified nurse midwife, if that means anything to anybody, simply because that's what's legal in North Carolina. But so I've been a doula for almost 8 years. I've seen almost 80 births. I love what I do. I've been doing it since I was a teen.
Wow.
And when I moved to Harlem was when I really, really got serious. Like, I was probably the most serious and the most consistent when I was in Harlem, because it was just where I think my practice was kind of like born, and it's where it kind of flourished. So I do a lot of work in North Carolina, but it's different now because that's where like my home is and where I'm gonna be for the foreseeable future. And so I built roots a bit differently. But in Harlem, you couldn't tell me shit. I was just boop, 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 boop. Anybody needs a doula, can't have a doula. And I got to do a lot of it for free because I had a big girl job, nonprofit job, and so I didn't have to charge anybody. So I loved what I did.
Okay.
That being said, I got to serve some really wonderful folks who needed a lot of support. So one of the families in particular, and I want to tell this story in particular because I want people to just be mindful of the hospital system and how wild it can be. So this is by far one of the worst case scenarios I've ever seen. I think that it's just important for people to know that it is a worst case scenario, but that is also possible. The hospital system is supposed to care for you. They don't always. So anyway, met this family. They were LGBTQIA plus family, 2 women, 2 young women, both black. One, I believe, is an immigrant. Not sure what African country, but I know an immigrant. And the other was from New York City. So they fell in love. They were both living at shelters at the time. One was living with their family and the other was living on their own. But because they were pregnant, they had gotten pregnant, they could live, in a shelter with just them because they were considered a small family.
Okay.
And so I would go to the shelter and I would see this family and we would meet, and I just got to build a really, at first it was kind of like a slow building of relationship, but now we talk at least once a month. Like, they're such a wonderful family. But anyway, so we got pregnant, they got pregnant, it was wonderful. They found me as their doula through, I think, an organization, and we decided to work together. And so we did a little bit of childbirth education, got to the labor, and they were like, we need to meet you at the hospital. The one hospital we don't want to go to if we have to use an ambulance is Harlem Hospital. Well, what you don't know about ambulances is that they sign contracts with hospitals that tell them where they can, basically where they have delivering privileges. So they can only really bring you to a certain amount of hospitals depending on where they have contracts. So the hospital that they end up is Harlem Hospital, exactly where they did not want to be. So they get there and we're close. Like, I think by the time I arrived, we were like 9 centimeters.
Whoa.
It was too late. They were telling her it was too late for an epidural, which some hospitals abide by that, not always. Some hospitals will be like, if it's 10 centimeters and you want one, you can have it.
Okay.
But she got there 9 centimeters and they were like, no. So she was like, okay. And that's important later down the road. But anyway, so we get to pushing out this baby. We pushing. This baby is born. Happy birthday. It's great. But because it's Harlem Hospital, there are 2 things to note. One, it's in the middle of Harlem, so everybody in Harlem uses Harlem Hospital. And 2, Harlem,
sound like Grady.
It's terrible. It's even worse. So, because I'm sure Grady is properly staffed, or at least was before the pandemic, because this is before the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay.
Harlem Hospital has never been properly staffed, ever. So there's always a shortage of nurses, a shortage of OBs, and I don't believe they use midwives, or at least they didn't in 2019. So the baby's born. We maybe had like a 2nd-degree tear, so a small tear, very normal, probably not something that she generally felt. But it needed to be repaired, so we needed to do sutures. And so the provider is down there with local anesthetic, not an epidural, but just little like pinches of anesthetic. Have you ever had anesthetic at the dentist?
Yes.
It wears off after a little while, right?
Yeah.
So it needs repairs, take a little while. So she gets a little bit of anesthetic. She's, So it ended up, but somebody comes in onto the L&D floor and they're like 10 centimeters and crowning. So this baby is like being born as this person is being wheeled onto the floor, which is great. Love that for them. But because they're short staffed, what does that mean? We're in the middle of sutures. We're in the middle of a repair, and the OB is the only OB on the floor for a floor that probably sees like 500 something birds a month. And she's one of maybe 2 OBs there. So she has to drop what she's doing because the other OB is in a room with somebody else who's still pushing, and this person is about to be born. So she, if you've ever seen like sutures or you watch Grey's Anatomy, you know that you have to put the needle onto things that look like scissors, and it's not like really sewing. You have to use like little scissors. Well, she puts the scissors down just right underneath the butt cheek of the person who had just given birth, right?
Where is this going?
Leaves it connected to the thread, connected to the person's, you know, vagina.
No.
It's being repaired. So do you know what nurses do when they're in the room after surgery happens, or after, you know, there are a whole bunch of, you know, instruments being used? Nurses have to clean and count.
Yeah.
They have to count every instrument that's on the table. And when they're missing stuff, they have to go and find it. So 2 of the things that you...
I'm just picturing like what could happen.
2 of the things that you have to go find are that needle and the needle holder.
Stop.
Where's the needle and
I'm
the
getting
needle
the
holder?
visual like.
It's underneath this person's butt cheek, right?
Uh-huh.
They have a baby, a brand new baby on their chest, right?
Yeah.
They're still, you know, and
Oh
it's
my
normal
God.
and natural to be, you know, a little bit bleeding, a little bit open after birth. Well, this nurse goes, and I kind of remember this in slow motion now, but she goes and grabs the suture and yanks it.
Oh.
And she was trying to like put it on the table.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, lawsuit. $1 million lawsuit. And that's like worst case scenario.
That's crazy.
Simplest injury. Because there are tons of things that you can sue an OB for. Tons of shit.
But she actually sued him.
Yeah.
And it is a wow.
Hell yeah. And
Wow.
she should have.
Yeah,
If
of
you
course.
have a good doula, she took notes, or they took notes at every moment.
Okay.
They wrote your birth story down. Hopefully y'all wrote a letter to the hospital to let them know what happened, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's already on file and documented. So now that baby is probably like 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
And
Wow.
when the family is finally ready to sue, there's no statute of limitations. And